Welcome to the City Church Leader Podcast, Episode 4 of Season 1, the podcast where we explore the intersection of spiritual health, emotional health, and how we grow as leaders in the kingdom of God. I'm Jim Moss, your host for today's episode, along with the lead pastor of City Church, Matt Nelson. Today we're diving into secret number 4 of how to be an emotionally healthy leader, focusing on this idea: healthy leaders value people over the process and results. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us today. We've been saying this tagline for, goodness, I guess 15 years now. We value you over what you can do for the organization. I've got to really just have a side seat, if you will, of you leading our staff and me into this over the last 15 years. And I can truly say this isn't something that we just say, it's something that we truly value and live out. We've seen staff members come and go. We've rehired multiple staff members that have exited over the years. And I think people overall that get to know you as a leader truly see this and believe this about you and your leadership. But I would love just to kind of hear, like, what does this mean to you? And where did this originate? Where did this come from?
Yeah. I don't know am I allowed to give like a Sunday school answer to this one?
Flannel board Jesus?
I really think the answer is Jesus. I think when you look at his life and what we're called to, people are the center of the bullseye. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just amazing how I think that can get lost. And we always talk about there's tensions to be managed. And I think in the business world, it's like you have to get results. There's productivity. Yeah. But, in the kingdom of God, which we can bring our business into this or whatever, any organization, it's always about people.
Yeah.
Like they are the end goal.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing how easily that can get lost. And you even see a lot of churches that are like, oh yeah, we're about reaching people, and they're using people to reach people.
Yeah.
Which that ain't it,
Yeah.
And so maybe I've seen a little bit of that. I've seen a little bit of that abuse, and just trying to create a culture where people are the goal. Like we truly value you because that's what love is, right?
Yeah.
And so, maybe it's a correction of some things that we've missed, but also I think it's just rooted in the life of Jesus and who he was.
Yeah, and I think it's too of just being strategic and not losing focus of what is the main goal. We've seen that. How many people have come to City Church over the years because they've been deeply wounded because they weren't valued over the process or the system.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We unintentionally became a church for people who left their staff position at another church to try to figure out who Jesus was and recover. And we don't always get this right. Trust me. Yeah. We've had our moments as well, but I think we have created a safe place where we'll look at somebody that comes in and I'm like, I don't think you need to join a team right now.
Yeah.
I think you need to heal.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you need to maybe enjoy or receive. You've been giving for a long time. I think you need to receive from the body of Christ for a little while and allow God to do a deeper work. And they kind of look at you like, is that allowed?
It's like it's like a shock to the system of, I haven't heard that in so long. And are you for real?
Yeah.
Like, are you really real?
Yeah. Well, and I look at people and I'm like, well, first and foremost, this sounds bad, but we don't have to have you. We're not, again, a church where a few people do everything. So, you create an atmosphere where everybody kind of finds their rhythm and place, and then, you're able to allow people to take those times where you're not just relying on one or two people to do it all.
Yeah, that's so good. I know we've talked a lot about this on this podcast, and really this is the essential theme of this, but would love just to kind of come back to this, because I think it's important to keep coming back to center of just what does it mean to be emotionally healthy leader, and why is that so important in the workplace, in today's culture, in the church even?
Yeah, I think it's, when I think about that, I think it's all about aligning, our backstage out of the spotlight life with the life that people see. There's the analogy I think people have used over the years that 90% of an iceberg is underwater, and I think that
Sure.
the reality of our life is that whatever we don't address in secret or behind the scenes will ultimately surface in how we lead, and it'll be exposed, and not just some grievous sin, but I'm just saying it will limit your effectiveness. So,
Yeah.
if we do the hard work of behind the scenes becoming healthy, where we embody it, where it's not force, we're not, trying to manufacture this, but it becomes who we are, then you reap the fruit of that.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not something that you're, again, trying to manufacture or produce, by gritting your teeth, but it just comes out of who you are. And, that's my goal, is to be just a leader that's able to operate out of this overflow, because behind the scenes and backstage, it's healthy.
Yeah. And I think it's easy to recognize when you're truly centered, which is what you're talking about. Like your identity is fully rooted in the things of God. It's easy to recognize when somebody's coming out sideways, when they're trying to either manipulate or force or finagle something, in order to get a result.
Yeah. Yeah. And let's not lie about the current culture we live in, that, even social media and everybody, it's all about what I project.
Yeah.
It's this fast rise, and, we look around of leaders that, don't finish well or don't handle a situation well. You're like, well, what did you expect? You can't just get handed position and expect to handle that well.
Yeah.
It's not how it works.
Matt, thanks for sharing that. Would love just to hear a personal experience, if you can think of one. I know I'm putting you on the spot, where valuing people over the process led to a positive outcome, whether in your leadership or for them or for the organization. I know you're racking your brain right now.
Well, honestly, the example that came to mind, you just alluded to a minute ago in this conversation, but it's those, we've had leaders come through our church where we made decisions that was not best for us, but was best for them.
Yeah.
It was best. It was what they needed.
Sure.
It may have created a hole and a gap in something that we needed, and it would be better if they stayed, or if we just asked them to do this. But, even past staff members that you said have come back to City Church, which we've had a lot, which is really rare. It's almost because once they left here, they looked and experienced something else, and are like, okay, I'm not really valued. I'm not really honored here. Nobody really cares about me.
Sure.
I've just kind of got to do this job. And then they come back because they want to be a part of something that, I want to be a part of something bigger than myself, but I also want to be a part of something that's developing and growing my soul.
Yeah.
And it has been amazing. And I can think of numerous people over the years, not just staff members, but, people that we blessed and honored, and even people that we sent out, or, whether they were leaving the right way or not, we wanted to honor them the best we could. And how many of those relationships come back around over time? Mm-hmm. It is something, like even when you're leaving a job, when you're transitioning out of something, like you honor those people. And it's amazing how in life those relationships circle back.
Yeah.
Because of how you handled it.
Yeah.
And what you did.
Yeah. I think transition is a soapbox for both of us.
Yeah.
And that is something that we talk about from the very beginning when we're onboarding people onto every team, staff member or not. And, there's, kind of three phases of that, of like my expectations for you, your expectations for me, and the benefits received when both of those are met.
Yeah.
And we truly want that,
we do,
for people, but it's like, you got to talk about it. But the reality is transition is just done so poorly.
It is.
All the time. We could have a whole podcast for years about this.
We probably do.
Stories and stories of how bad it is. And, of I'm never going to go back to that place, and I never want to see that person ever again. That's very typical.
Yeah.
Because of the wounding that happens.
Yeah. Not only that, but I think even nowadays, it's when you don't even have this, conversation together, and there's not, like, you don't deal with it, then even after it's over, you kind of fill in the gaps. And like that bitterness and resentment can easily creep in. And I was 23 years old, and my first job full time, and my pastor took me aside, and I had witnessed some people that were on like our core team leave the church. And I brought this up with him, and everything that he told me, he was preparing me because he knew that one day I would lead. And he just said, hey, they're going to come in and there's going to be people going to go out. And I was like, the reason that you have to bless them is not only for them and what God's going to continue to do, but you have to do that for your soul.
Yeah.
Because if you don't start blessing people and if you don't hold them loosely, then you're going to become bitter.
Yeah.
And you're going to hold on to that. And this is really impactful to me.
That's good. I think that kind of leads into this is how can leaders, church or the marketplace, create an environment that prioritizes emotional health among their teams. And that could be staff, volunteers, employees. I think it goes to say across the board there.
Yeah. I think the behaviors of any organization, church, whatever, business, it's going to follow what's truly valued. And people say they value things, but value is what you allow. It's what you celebrate. It's what you talk about. It's what you make sacrifices for. So your scorecard for success, if it's just results driven and productivity, then you're not going to really value these being emotionally healthy leader.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, we just alluded to this. So sometimes, creating an environment that's healthy means that I do what's best in this moment for that person and not what's best for me or the organization.
Yeah.
Right.
How hard is that?
Yeah. Now, I mean, if you find yourself in like, this person can't do the job, that's another conversation. But I'm talking about there are moments and times where you're not thinking about me or what you can do for me.
Yeah.
You're going through a season right now or a time where, because I value you, I want to help you navigate this in a way because I value and love you.
Yeah.
And that's a culture. You can talk about things, but that's sacrifice.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the culture is all about, what's fast. And, when we lose focus, we also lose trust, and God is actually going to fulfill his promise.
Yeah.
And he's going to take care of this, and I don't have to create something.
Yep.
I have to be diligent and faithful and all those things, yes. But, when I lose focus inside, I lose trust, and therefore, I hurt somebody.
Right.
I wound them.
And I think we could even go, so let's say a church is just obsessed with growth.
Yeah.
Or a business is obsessed with productivity or results. If that becomes your scorecard, it's only a matter of time before some sort of abusive systems or structure creeps in. And I'm not talking it has to be grievous. Sometimes it is. But if that is the ultimate goal, then people ultimately are a stepping stone to get you where you want to go.
Yeah.
And so you're not really going to value them. If you're a business owner, a business leader, or a church that you value people at the highest level, then it's not just getting to this end goal. It's how you do it and how you treat people, because they're a part of the end goal.
Right.
So I think this is a big part of this conversation is you have to clearly define what your scorecard of success. If you go into a business and they say, oh, we're a culture all about people, but at the end of the day, it's all about the bottom line.
Yeah, up and to the right.
Yeah. It's a matter of time before you're going to experience some sort of reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, breakdown. That's so good. And then, like I said, it's so easy to lose focus of that.
Sure.
Over and over again. And I know this is a huge deal for you. We talked about this last month of just having the right people in your life to keep you centered, when you get off this. And it's easy to do. Frustrations lead to that of, well, now I've got to create something and stir something up. Let's jump into practices that emotionally healthy leaders can implement to ensure that their team members are valued and supported. What does that ongoing process look like? Maybe, tangibly, what does that look like?
Sometimes things aren't very complicated and trying to keep them simple. And what I've learned over the years is just simple check-ins on a regular basis to determine how people are doing. Yeah. Questions like, is there anything that's causing frustration in your life? Is there something that I can do, even frustration with me, that I can help you navigate towards? Just very simple questions as a leader that helps those that you lead know, I do value. I care about this. I'm willing to deal with the things that may be difficult for you. So, check in with them, develop them. What are things that I can do to help you become a better person? A better spouse. Husband, wife, person, leader. Better with your finances. Celebrating people. Like we already talked about, giving them grace when that's needed, because everybody, if you journey with somebody long enough, they're going to go through different seasons of life.
Yeah.
And so to me, every leader is also a shepherd.
Yes.
Yeah.
Should be.
It should be.
Yeah.
It's a shepherding
Hopefully
mentality,
they are.
a pastoral mentality. And, this is another conversation at the time. Being a shepherd doesn't mean you don't hold people accountable.
Yeah.
We're not talking about just loving people and then they do whatever. But we're saying, there's a good balance of, I see myself as a shepherd.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a balance of, what I would call gift-centered leadership versus grace-centered leadership. And I think to produce emotionally healthy people, you really have to have a strong practice of grace-centered leadership. And people are going to continue to let you down. People are going to continue to not do what you ask them to do. But, as we've talked about so much is, you've got to keep coming back to have those difficult conversations. I mean, that's part of emotional health and growth.
For sure.
All of us desire growth in our lives. How do we balance the need for results and the importance of maintaining strong relationships within the team?
Yeah. I think that we had just kind of alluded to this, but it's not an either or. It's not a paradigm, and this is, everybody loves the extremes, and I see this in the church a lot. Either you have a leader that just wants to be CEO, or you have a leader that just wants to be shepherd. And I think it's understanding these two things aren't mutually exclusive. They truly, I believe, can be married in a way that I value. At the same time, I want you to maximize your potential, and we have a vision and goals that we have to meet, and we can do both of those. We don't have to have such a grace-oriented environment that we don't get anything accomplished or hold anybody accountable.
Sure.
Right. And at the same time, I also understand this is not just about the bottom line, because these are people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people are messy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's holding those things in tension and learning to navigate with both in mind and not just either or.
Yeah. So let's jump into this of even just this whole idea of measuring metrics. How do you measure that in in this emotionally healthy leader space of, how do I know if I'm evaluating the person over the process? Like, what are the measurements around there that you've used, that you look at, kind of the gauges, I would say? Maybe even thinking of like, obviously we have gauges on our car that we use to, propel it down the road. But like, what are the gauges that you look at in, leading me, leading our staff, leading, all the people that you oversee here at City Church?
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously emotional health is a whole lot easier or harder to gauge than it would be, numbers and finances and things where you can have hard data. And so, this is a process of, number one, I think you have to lead by example. And then, I think continually evaluating, and, we do this a lot as a staff, evaluating our spiritual health, our emotional health, health as with spouse and marriage, and, all the things that we're dealing with, and then being willing to talk openly and honestly about, shortcomings and failings and growth areas, and, the parts of our life that we struggle to be emotionally healthy in. You got to have an outlet for that. Nobody checks every boxes. And then when you do feel like you are aligned emotionally, something else is going to come up, because that's life.
Yeah.
It's going to hit you that you didn't, all of a sudden I've never dealt with a mental health struggle, but I am right now. Well, it changes the dynamic.
Yeah. It's so good. I know even, I think it was this past Monday, you brought to, our team during once a month we have our leader chapel, which all of you are invited to that are listening to this, that are a leader at City Church. But your question was, what does it mean to be a successful leader? And you had 3 points of healthy, faithful, and fruitful. And then even just this question, am I producing around me what looks like Jesus?
Yeah.
Man, what a beautiful gauge, for all of us to continually look at is, what is that fruit that is not necessarily that I'm producing, but like that I'm leading people into? Are the people that I'm leading looking more or less like Jesus because of
Mm.
my leadership?
Yeah. Yeah. Those are, those three things came out of really what is a successful leader if you had to
Mhm.
narrow it down.
Yeah.
And, there's probably more than that, but healthy, faithful, and fruitful are three things that I think are really good biblical gauges for healthy leadership.
Yeah. I wrote these down and I think they're worth sharing. I know you're still developing this, which I love, but you said healthy leaders have necessary conversations right away, which is definitely, I think it was our last podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Healthy leaders do not allow systematic flaws to go unaddressed.
Yeah.
They deal with those right away. They've invited healthy levels of feedback to give and speak truth into their lives.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think those are, again, we talk about health from a big perspective, really broad, and then trying to narrow it down to say, well, what does that actually mean? And those are some more specific things. So.
That's good. So, in order to value people over the process, I think one of the things that are so key is we have to be really good listeners.
Mm.
And I know this is cheesy, but there's a reason that we have two ears and one mouth, right?
That's right.
But what role would you say does active listening play in emotionally healthy leadership, and how can leaders take a step to improve this skill?
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that you look at emotionally unhealthy people or people who are driven just by certain metrics or certain dynamics, and they don't take the time to listen. They're always on the go. It's like those
Yeah.
people would rather, I'm coming to come in. I'd rather just fix it or tell you what to do instead of really kind of being an intuitive leader that sets and listens to your feedback and not just to check the box, but truly listens because they
Yeah.
value you.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes maybe, something that young leaders struggle with because they are trying to prove themselves.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Let me hold on. Let me tell you something real quick.
Yeah. From my vast years of experience, I'm 21. Let me fill you out. And I get it. And it's not that you don't have anything to offer, but it's like you feel like you have to prove yourself as a leader. And then, I feel like wisdom, if you really lean into wisdom as an older leader, you're like, okay, I'm not here to prove myself or to make myself look good. So I can actively listen.
Yeah.
you know.
I think that's so key of just, how much are you actually listening or how much are you talking? We were joking about this the other day because there's an individual that you and I both met with recently and they love to talk.
Hmm.
And, it's like, I think that is a key barometer of like, am I speaking the whole time or am I actually listening? Why am I even meeting with this person? One, but like, am I listening? Do I care about what they have to say? Do I have a question that I need to ask and just be quiet?
Yeah. If I'm meeting with somebody who I feel like is a little bit ahead of me in life and I find myself talking the whole time, something's wrong.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And so I do, we do have that every once in a while. People ask us to meet and then they sit there and, I'm like, I don't know if this is the best use of your time or my time because, I feel like you have all the answers and yet you wanted to meet because you wanted to gain my perspective, but you haven't asked one good question or listened once. So
One of my mentors is 75 and we have started circling up again. And he was telling me, just the other day, he was meeting with a young leader and this gentleman came with no questions and just talked the whole time. And he was like, I can't help him, and you're talking somebody that has walked with Jesus deeply for decades and decades. And I mean, mighty man of prayer and humility. And I think it's key, that we really take an active role in listening.
yeah.
And even, as we're leading others, we need to be listening to our team. I love that show, Undercover Boss. I don't know if you've ever watched
Yeah,
that.
I've seen that. I've seen that before. Yeah.
But it's, I have more of a business mindset of just, I love it when these CEOs go in and they're actually doing the work, and they can't do the work because it's very difficult,
Mm-hmm.
and, just the processes and all that. And so they typically fail, but they listen to the stories of their people, and it's powerful.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for us as leaders of organization, and also for our leaders to listen to their team, because they're the ones doing the work, right? They're the ones that actually know how to improve the process.
Yep.
And Toyota has a deal, I think it's KATA, Kata, that they actually listen to their employees for feedback, and that's how their system of improvement, which is just powerful. But all right, conflict. Everybody loves conflict. You said something the other day that I honestly, because you've done this so well, that it was just this reminder of, you didn't always love conflict.
No.
But I've never seen you handle it poorly for 15 years. I mean, even when, were you 24 or 25 when we started?
Yeah, 24, almost 25.
It doesn't matter. I mean, that's a young age.
Sure.
But you've always handled conflict incredibly well. Conflict that we've had, conflict that, I've seen many people that have come over the years, but you have a very unique skill set that I know that you've learned, whether from your dad or Rodney or whoever. But here's the question: is how can leaders address and manage conflicts while still prioritizing the emotional well-being of their team members?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think if I could start anywhere, it would be, being an emotionally healthy leader and handling conflict. Like those are one and the same. It's like how you do that will really determine how emotionally healthy you are.
Right.
And you've said this numerous times. We don't have a lot of great models for this. Most people grow up and they've never seen this in their home. They've never seen it in their business. They've never seen it in their church. Every conflict is handled poorly, or there's a ripping away. And I think, primarily too, number one, we have to cross the bridge of conflict's inevitable and you can't avoid it.
Yes.
And the more that you avoid it, the less people will want to follow you. Yeah. So that's it almost seems counterintuitive, but
talk a little bit more about that. Of the more you avoid conflict, the less people want to follow you.
Yeah. So we think that
Why
by
is
avoiding conflict, somehow we're, being peacemakers, or, it's like, you're avoiding what's inevitable. Conflict is inevitable. It will happen if you have any depth of relationship, if you're on a good team, if you stick around anywhere. And so everybody wants to follow the person who sees the conflict and addresses it in the right way. Nobody wants to be a part of that organization that sweeps it under the rug, and then things are unspoken or unsaid, and different factions and camps and, uncertainty.
So do you think people grow frustrated with that when it's not addressed?
It's
Like the followers?
Not only frustrated, but it's a matter of time before it implodes in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will surface. It's going to come out. It's the same in our marriage as it is in our businesses and all of that things. And so, at some point, and I had some healthy examples, which was good. I grew up as a kid as a conflict avoider. So I hated conflict. I never wanted to deal with it. I actually thought peacemaking was more about just figuring out a way not to deal with it. Peacemaking is not avoiding it. It's dealing with conflict the right way.
Yeah, head on.
How do we be a peacemaker? And so I always share the story. Being a dorm director in college helped me cross that bridge, because now I went from avoiding conflict to having to deal with it daily. Yeah. But then I realized in 99.9% of conflicts, they ended up positive as long as I handled it the right way.
Yeah.
You can't handle conflict from a place of insecurity where you're trying to win or you're trying to get the upper hand. You go in with a mentality of honoring others, owning your own peace with humility. And it's amazing how conflict can deepen relationships.
Yeah. So let's go back to the listening portion, right? We talked about being an active listener. How key is it to turn on your listening ears, if you will, during conflict?
Yeah. Well, for you, who are listening to this and you're married, you know when you're in conflict and the difference between you trying to win the argument and you listening to your spouse, right? Yeah, I mean, are you sitting there just formulating your next opinion or idea? Or are you sitting there actively listening for how they feel and why they came to this place? I'm not trying to over spiritualize this, but I don't know how you do this well without the fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, it takes a ton of humility, and it takes like I'm not trying to win this. I want to meet you where you're at, so we can both move towards reconciliation together. And so, man, I think the bedrock of it is, man, I'm embodying the fruit of the Spirit, and I want to bring that into the difficult areas like conflict and transition.
Yeah. Would you say that it's impossible to, one, not only be an emotionally healthy leader, but value people over the process when your focus is being right, like over anything else?
Yeah. And, people who work in the secular world, this is, in just the marketplace, this is what I hear constantly is I have a boss who doesn't know how to deal with conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you're probably listening to this, and many of you know that, your boss has never had it modeled to them.
Yep.
And so they're very defensive, or, they're not meeting you in a place of grace because they've never been taught that. They don't embody that. And so, yeah, it's hard. It's hard because that, it's difficult how you're able to present certain things to those people. You're going to do the best you can in those contexts. But, I hear that all the time. I'm in a situation where my boss will, again, we don't have examples and models of that. That's not, we we live in a culture right now, and we're being discipled by politics, and you want to talk about not meeting people where they're at. It's just destroying them.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's the Wild West out there, truly. I would say I did not have this modeled for me in a healthy way growing up. Like, it was more like explosive. I was a lot like you. Like, I want to keep the peace. I'm going to avoid it. I'm not going to confront anybody, because one, I just, don't want to have the conversation. But, when we got on staff together and started City Church, like, you did not let me avoid this. We addressed it head on, and, I would say it was very uncomfortable for me for a lot of years. Yeah. Now I would say, my wife would tell you, she's like, I have no fear of conflict, but, I did for many, 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 many years. But it's something that you can grow into.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to encourage people in, is like, you may be terrified listening to this conversation of like, dear God, I got to face conflict. But it is something that you can grow into, and you just got to begin, of like, try it, come with a question and listen, from that care piece of like, I care more about you than what I can get from you, and help me to understand where you are.
Right.
Why are you showing up that way?
Yeah. Don't let the fear of what could happen keep you from doing what you need to do and addressing certain things. Some people live in that fear of what could be. I also want to make it really clear, if you're a person who deals with conflict, not everybody will journey with you.
Yeah.
That's right. Some people in those conflicts, you'll part ways. They won't want to deal with it. They won't deal with it the right way. But you can lay your head down at night knowing I did the things that I needed to do. Mm-hmm. I feel like I did that with honor. And then I will say this, the people who will journey with you the longest, they will journey with you to the longest time and the depth because of your willingness to do that.
Yeah.
So I do believe our inability to do this well keeps us from the depth of relationships that we really want and the longevity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge reason why I'm still here,
Sure.
at City Church.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
100%. So what advice would you give the leaders who struggle with focusing on people over the process or results?
Yeah, I think understanding how you're wired, again, what your natural tendencies are you more of a people person or are processes, which do you lean toward? And, as a leader, it's great to lean in your strengths, but I think you have to know your weaknesses, especially if you're leading people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so maybe if people isn't your natural tendency, you have to be more strategic about people processes than you do about systems.
Yeah.
And, again, not to over spiritualize this, but you look back at, the book of Acts, and it's a struggle of a growing church where the Spirit of God is moving and changing people's life, but also there wasn't enough systems and processes for the ministry that needed to be done. So you're reading the book of Acts, and then all of a sudden, the widows are being neglected, and the apostles can't do it all, and they're trying to, and so there's a systems problem, right? It's like, okay, now we have to develop systems in order for this gospel to spread and for the job to be accomplished, and so it's, it really is a great leadership lesson of dynamic of those two things at work.
Yeah, that's good. So I would say everyone on the planet has this desire of, hey, how am I doing in this, right? So let's discuss that for a little bit of just how can organizations, and I know I mentioned this earlier, but the measurement of this, even like the feedback for how is your team doing in this, the leaders that you're overseeing. How can I, as somebody that is, I've got employees, I have team members here at City Church that I oversee, how can I help them understand how they're doing in that? That feedback loop.
Yeah, I think. Let me say this: I don't know where you're at on this whole process of developing this, and so I would say number one, it has to start with what you value, and so if you don't know what you value, then you can't ever define it or ever get there. Yeah. Then number two, what are the behaviors that will show that you value these things? And so it's one thing to value it; it's another things like these are the behaviors that we want to embody for these values. And then number three, it is the feedback. It's how are we doing? Yeah. And so, I would say, I don't know as a leader where you're at on that. Maybe you've never defined the values. Maybe they're kind of unclear. You kind of know what they are. Maybe number two, you haven't said what's the behaviors that come alongside of it. Or maybe number three, you just really don't know if it's happening. And so you need to have conversations. You need to ask questions. You need to listen, right? Yeah. Do the people that you're leading actually know you value? And I think there are spoken values and there's unspoken values. You'll go to healthy organizations and they can't list all the values, but they know like we value this because this is what we do. Yeah. And I think that's great. Yeah. And that can be really effective.
Yeah. I think the key question, and this is something that, and I think we've had on our direct reports for years, maybe decades now. You just sent out our annual review document. And, it's like, I know when you and I sit down, your first question to me is be like, Jim, how are you?
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. I know the rest of our team does because I know that you mean that, and you care more about me than all the things that I'm overseeing and leading. And, I think that's key to lean into no matter how big our team is.
Yeah.
That person knows that I truly value them, and I'm asking the question, what do you need? What does your family need?
Yeah.
What do you need personally?
Yeah, that's honestly easy for me because I am a people over processes. And so I would say anybody who's leading that doesn't come natural, you can still be good at it.
Yeah.
Just build it in.
Yeah.
Make it a part of it. And I think on that, the annual review and anytime I'm meeting with one of our, staff members, I always ask the question, is there anything that's causing frustration, including maybe it's me, your leader?
Yeah.
What's the other 2% or 5% that needs to be spoken that maybe it's not?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And I know you've been saying that for a while. I mean, that's somewhat new, maybe the last 5 years or so. But I think that's so key. Is there something that you're not sharing with me? Like to push a little bit further of, maybe that frustration that you're unwilling to share.
Yeah.
And let's go there.
Yeah. And the reason I love that is because number one, there's like, it creates a culture really healthy where there's no like skeletons in the closet. There's nothing like you're waiting to pop out because you've created a culture of safety. It's like, no, if we can address it in its infancy, then we don't have to address it when it blows up into something too big for us to handle.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times it's like, oh, as a leader, I don't know if I want to deal with that. Well, you're going to. It's just at what level?
Yeah.
Am I going to deal with it when it's small, and that maybe we can figure this out when it's just like I'm kind of struggling with this? Or do you deal with it when they've been sitting on it for 9 months and it's a daily struggle and I can't do this anymore and be part of this organization?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, at what level do we want to handle those things?
Yeah. Yeah. You got to lean in. And like I said from the very beginning, I mean, that's something that I've always appreciated about you and your leadership. I think no matter where you are, this is something that you can begin to do. And the one thing that I want to just convey to you, this podcast is specifically for our city church leaders, team leaders, and directors. And, Matt and I both just want to say thank you for everything that you do to lead this organization. We do this to help you grow, to become a better leader, to become a more emotionally healthy leader. And this is just one of those steps that we all need to take.
Yeah.
This was something that I was not good at 15 years ago. And, I want to say thank you to you for leading me specifically into this. I was more process driven and results driven than anything. And that was just kind of how I've led, how it's been modeled, and, over the years and decades. And man, thank you for helping me make that shift.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I'm so grateful for you. And I just say to anybody, that's listening, even, not even in regards to city church leadership in the church, but whatever you do, whatever, area, business, organization that you may be in, how we treat people just matters so deeply.
Yeah.
The little small seeds that we get to plant and just how we honor people and how we treat them. You don't have to be in full-time ministry. This could be a business interaction with, someone that you have to deal with, a vendor that you have to deal with once a month, but how you talk up to them and how you do that, like all of that matters. That's all being the gospel.
Yeah.
It has significant impact. You get to lead somebody that now they've never had a healthy leader or been a part of a healthy process, but they see that in you, and guess what? They are going to go replicate that. Like, that's a significant thing. So, I just want to say that because I think it's a big deal.
Yeah. How people feel like this I wouldn't say this is like a direct kingdom principle, but it definitely ties in of, it's not necessarily what they believe, but how they feel, and so that comes back to this of, am I producing around me what looks like Jesus?
Yeah.
Which is centered on love.
Yeah.
Do they feel that I love them? And so you could say it is how they feel, because it is like love is that key.
Yep.
Am I leading out of love? Do they know that I love them even at the end of the day, no matter what discussion that we've had? I think that's so important.
Absolutely.
But hey, Matt, thank you so much for joining us today on episode 4 of the City Church Leader Podcast. As always, great stuff. Man, would love for you just to say a prayer of blessing over our listeners who are doing their best and leading others into the space of caring more about the individual, just really caring more about the person than over the process.
Yeah.
And but love for you to pray a blessing over them today.
Yeah, would love to. Father, we're so grateful for your grace and mercy that you've extended to us, Father. We pray that in our lives, God, that we would be leaders who extend that same love and grace and goodness to everybody that we meet. And God, I pray that it wouldn't be something that we have to just manufacture or just kind of grit our teeth, but love would truly be an overflow of what has taken place inside of our heart. And God, I think that is the sweet spot when we take these practical things, but we also apply it with just the fruit of the Spirit that is growing in us and being produced in us. And we're intentional about our leadership. God, what you can do in that space. with a heart that is moving towards you and intentional practices of health. God, I truly believe that is an incredible space to be in, and I pray that over every single person who's listening. That God, in their marriage, as a mom and dad, as a coworker, employee, leader, Father, that you would just help guide them into this. God, we give you all the glory. We're so grateful for what you're doing in us and through us. We pray it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. Hey, we'll see you next month for episode 5 of Secrets of an Emotionally Healthy Leader.